I was thought that I would try to finish up these 8 stories, ghost stories, and I thought I'd do the whole one tonight and divide them up into episodes. So here we go. The Faceless Woman by Marie D. Henry, copyrighted 1996. The wind blew from the north. It drove the snow before it in thick clouds that rolled across the fields, gleaming white under January's moon. Van sat on the wide board spanning the open box of the bobsled. He knew that he should be hunkered down inside of the sled's box for protection from the wind's icy grip, but he just could not make himself leave his vantage perch. The wind pulled and tugged at him, and at times it did manage to push its icy fingers through the fleece-lined leather coat he wore and his hand-woven woolen pants. But it was only a slight pinprick of cold, so he stayed up on the high seat. He pulled the fur flaps of his fur cap tighter over his ears. He was sure that this was the coldest weather of the winter. He looked up at the sky where the wind and full moon hung. It was so bright that the sky around it was almost as blue as during the day. But this blue sky was dotted with thousands of twinkling lights. He had never seen the stars so bright. The bobsled's metal runners squealed loudly on the frosty snow, accompanied by the screeching and crunching of the iron shoes on the horses' hooves as they plodded along. He did not dare trot them, for the cold air that they would have to inhale into their lungs would destroy them with frostburn. He would be later than usual getting home, but that was better than 2 dead horses. They were his best team of black Canadians, and he did not want anything to happen to them. He let the reins dangle loosely in his mittened hands. He kept his head bent and turned away from the biting force of the wind, and kept his eyes closed most of the time against the burning coal. Inside the thick wool of his mittens, the tip of his fingers ached. He slapped first his right hand, then his left against his thigh to get the blood moving down into his fingers. When the horses heard the sound of Vance's slapping hands, they began to trot. He picked up the reins and with some effort pulled back on them. The team slowed to their steady walk. He jumped down into the sled's box and stood looking out into the moonlight. When the wind was not pushing the great clouds of white snow across the open fields on both sides of the road, the night felt almost warm to Vance's chilled face. He was glad that his direction of travel was due south. That put the north wind at his back, and if he hunched down into the high box, he felt almost no wind at all. But he continued to stand up with only his head above the top of the side boards. He kept his face turned away from the wind, but only for the reason of its cold bite on his exposed skin. He wanted to keep a watchful eye on the field on the east of the road, for it was there, on nights like this one, he had seen the shadowy form of a human being walking parallel with the road. This is episode 1.